So, OpenAI just dropped something pretty big for anyone building with AI, a brand new framework for creating sophisticated AI agents. Now, this isn't just another cool experiment. This is a production-ready toolkit, and it's designed to help us move beyond those fun little demos and actually build enterprise-level AI assistants. So, what's the big deal here? What makes this such a leap forward? Well, let's deconstruct it.
All right, here's the game plan for this explainer. We're going to start with the big problem, the AI orchestration challenge. Then we'll dive into OpenAI's new solution and the 4 key building blocks that make it tick. After that, we'll put it head-to-head with the competition, talk about the real-world costs of running these things, and finally, we'll help you figure out if this is the right tool for your next project.
So, first up, let's talk about the fundamental problem that this Agents SDK is trying to solve. I'm talking about the AI orchestration challenge. You know, it's all about closing that massive gap between a flashy proof of concept and a product that you can actually count on day in and day out.
And really, it all comes down to this one question. I mean, pretty much anyone can hack together a few API calls and build a simple chatbot demo over a weekend. But building an agent that can handle complex, multi-step jobs and do it reliably, at scale, without falling over, that, my friends, is a completely different universe of difficulty. The thing is, the real challenge isn't just about the AI's smarts. It's about all the messy engineering that has to surround it. We're talking about managing state, like remembering what you talked about 5 minutes ago. We're talking about making sure the system doesn't just crash when 1,000 people use it at once. And maybe most importantly, having the tools to actually see what the heck is going on under the hood when things inevitably go wrong.
And that brings us to OpenAI's answer. Now, this isn't their first rodeo. The new Agents SDK is actually a direct evolution of an older experimental project they had called Swarm. But this time, it's not an experiment. This time, it's built for the big leagues.
You can really see how they listened to developers here. Swarm was powerful, for sure, but it was stateless. And a stateless system is kind of like having a conversation with someone who has no short-term memory. You have to re-explain everything every single time. It was a massive headache for developers. The new SDK completely solves this with a primitive called Sessions that handles all that memory for you. Plus, it adds built-in tracing and debugging tools, which are absolutely non-negotiable for any serious app.
So how does this thing actually work? Well, the beauty of the SDK is its simplicity. Instead of this huge, heavy, complicated framework, it's all built on just 4 core ideas or primitives. Let's walk through each one, and to make it concrete, let's imagine we're building a travel booking system. First up, you have the agent itself. You could think of an agent as a specialized employee. In our travel company, we'd have a main travel planner agent. Its job is to chat with the user and figure out the big picture of their trip. But it's not going to do everything by itself. It knows it has a team of specialists it can call on.
And that brings us to the next primitive, the handoff. This is the magic sauce for how these agents work together. So when a user asks our travel planner to find a flight, it doesn't try to figure that out on its own. Instead, it performs a handoff to a flight booker agent who's a total expert on airlines and fares. This whole setup keeps each agent simple, focused, and way more reliable.
Then you've got the guardrail. Think of this as the responsible adult in the room. It's your quality control and your cost control, all in one. So, let's say the user told us their flight budget is $500. A guardrail can run right alongside the flight booker agent and double-check its work before it actually books anything, making sure it doesn't go over budget. It's what stops you from making really expensive mistakes. And finally, my personal favorite, the session. This primitive is a total game changer. It's the short-term memory for the whole operation. It's how the main travel planner remembers the user's destination, their dates, their budget, all of it, and makes sure that context gets passed along through all the different handoffs to the other agents. It saves developers from the nightmare of tracking all that stuff manually. Now, all these primitives work together in this automated cycle that the SDK handles for you, called the agent loop. It's pretty straightforward. First, it receives an input, a task from the user. Then it goes into the think step, where the LLM decides, can I answer this myself or do I need some help? If it needs help, it moves to the act step and calls a tool, like searching the web. Finally, it takes the results from that tool and repeats the loop, thinking again with this new piece of information, and it just keeps going until the job is done. Okay, so we've seen how the SDK works, which is cool, but it doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? Let's zoom out a bit and see how it stacks up against other popular agent frameworks out there, like LangGraph and CrewAI. Let's take a look at the strategic landscape.
The biggest differences really come down to their core design philosophy. The OpenAI SDK is all about elegant simplicity with its 4 primitives. LangGraph, on the other hand, is built on a literal graph structure, which makes it way more powerful for really complex looping workflows. And CrewAI uses this really intuitive metaphor of a crew of agents with different roles. But, and this is a big one, a huge advantage for the OpenAI SDK is that built-in tracing. With the others, you got to bring your own tools for observability.
And that quote right there really gets to the heart of the matter. It's the central strategic trade-off you have to make. The Agents SDK is incredibly powerful, and frankly, easier to use if you're all in on the OpenAI ecosystem. It's purpose-built for their models and tools. But frameworks like LangGraph, they prioritize being model agnostic. They give you the freedom to swap in models from Google or Anthropic or whoever, but that freedom comes with a little more setup complexity on your end.
All this power is awesome, but it's not free. So what does it actually cost to run one of these things? Let's get real for a minute and do a reality check on the total cost of ownership when you deploy an autonomous system. Let's start with just one concrete number. Using OpenAI's hosted code interpreter tool costs 3 cents per session. Now that might not sound like much, right? But here's the catch. That's a cost that sits on top of all the tokens your model is using just to think and respond. It's an extra fee for using the tool. And that's just one piece of a much bigger cost puzzle. The true cost is layered. You've got your standard model token costs, which change depending on which model you use. Then you've got those tool fees, like for the code interpreter. If you use file search, you're paying for the storage per day, and you're paying every single time the agent needs to look something up. It all adds up, and it can add up fast.
But honestly, the single biggest financial risk isn't on any price list. It's the autonomy itself. Because these agents decide for themselves when to think and when to act, a poorly designed agent can get stuck in a loop, just calling tools over and over and over again, racking up charges. This can cause your cost to absolutely explode without any warning. And that's exactly why those built-in tracing tools are so critical. They're your first line of defense against a runaway budget.
Okay, we have covered a lot, the what, the how, and the how much. So let's pull it all together and land the plane with some clear advice to help you decide if the OpenAI Agents SDK is the right choice for you.
So, who is this for? Well, you should probably be reaching for the Agents SDK when speed is your #1 priority. The simple design and integrated tools mean you can build and ship things incredibly fast. It also really shines for structured, sequential workflows. Think of a customer support funnel where you go from step A to B to C. And of course, if you want to squeeze every last drop of performance out of OpenAI's models and you need that built-in observability for cost control, this is definitely the way to go.
However, it's not for everybody. You should probably look at alternatives if being vendor neutral is a deal breaker for your company. If you absolutely must have the flexibility to switch between different model providers, then a framework like LangGraph is a much better architectural fit. LangGraph is also the winner for really complex, non-linear workflows. And hey, if your team just thinks better in terms of roles and responsibilities, CrewAI's whole crew metaphor might just click better for them.
And that brings us to the final and most important question you have to ask yourself. The OpenAI Agents SDK's deep integration into their ecosystem is both its greatest strength and its biggest strategic risk. There's no question it is the ultimate accelerator for development. But does that speed come at the price of being locked into a single vendor's world? That's the big decision every single development team is going to have to make.